Rolling Out family, welcome to another exciting show. Now, this one is really super special for me because I love all things politics. And this young man is the mover and shaker in the political world. Today, we have someone with us who served on President Biden's White House administration as the Director of Digital Engagement. He served on the 2020 Biden Harris campaign as the National Director of African American Paid Media and was the Deputy Digital Director of the 2021 Biden Presidential Inauguration Committee. He was also the Senior Public Affairs Director for the Smithsonian's National Museum of African American History and Culture. He is all the things. He is a keynote speaker. He is a TV commentator. He is a digital political strategist. He is the host of podcast, the Hip Politics Podcast. But more importantly, he is the founder and CEO of Hip Politics. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the screen today, Mr. Cameron Calvin Trimble. Cameron, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Monisha, for having me, and thank you to the Rolling Out family.
Absolutely. So when I read off your bio, and that's just a fraction, does it feel like you've done all of that?
If I'm being honest, yes, I try not to dwell in memories too much, but I think my personal Instagram page goes back about 10 years. And so
Wow.
I'm able to track a lot of those things sometimes if I'm scrolling, or I do spend a lot of time with my family and friends, and we do, I would say 70% of that is looking at old pictures and videos and reminiscing while also talking about the now and the future. So I do get to reminisce a little bit, but I try not to rest on my laurels because the fight always continues. I do purpose, I would say purpose and impact driven work. That's always my kind of North Star. So there's still so much work to be done, so many people to be helped, and so many new things to try. So, and luckily, as you mentioned, I live a lot in the digital and advertising space, which is could be changing. A new technology could come out in next week and kind of disrupt the entire system. So I constantly have to live in the now and the future.
So let's talk a little bit about how you got started. You have such a vibrant resume. How did you get started for those who are listening and are inspired, with your career, and how did you keep your career going in a trajectory that was, as you said, meaningful and purposeful work?
I think the seeds were planted at home growing up. My father is a now United Methodist bishop, was a pastor my entire life. My mom has been a community organizer, a community organizer, education and faith-based counselor. So I've always been in community. I'm the oldest of three. So I grew up born in Chicago, raised in Cleveland, and in the Midwest kid who always saw that growing up. Went to Howard University, as you can see, in student government. And so I think some of those seeds were planted, but I actually started my career and went to Howard actually to be a doctor. Did a couple years of medical school in Philadelphia. And really, while in medical school, my part-time job was doing what was new, I would say digital and email marketing and campaign, like as a side job. And about almost 2 years in, I stepped out on faith and got my first marketing job. And that was really, but it was then, I would say, big time politics. I have to thank two things. Obama's initial run and the inspiration coming out of Illinois, but and coming out of Chicago, just the inspiring to be able to see somebody in my lifetime that galvanized young people, like really embrace the internet, really embrace community. And then my Howard family, like I had so many different friends who got their careers right out of school, started in Congress, working on campaigns. And so when Obama ran, I kind of transitioned. I was in first couple years of marketing, and I dropped everything and set my sights on, like, I want to work for that man. I want to help him become president, whatever I have to do. And then one thing led to another. And I think that just kept rolling my career on. And I stayed as I'm always, when people say, what do you do? I'm a communicator and a connector. I've always had a North Star of communication and impact, and always believed in kind of the power of the digital universe in the sense that we are only as a global society are going to be connected more and more. So I loved learning and loved being a part of that cutting edge, whether it's on the technology or new ways we communicate and cut through people. So I've always lived in that digital communication world, and I've just kind of God's been blessing me. I've been lucky to work for great people, work on great campaigns, work for great institutions, and learn a lot. And just I would say it's easy to keep going because everything I'm doing is consistently changing. So
Mhm.
I'm always learning, always adapting, always working and hiring or working with new people that continue to kind of give me that spark.
Yeah. Well, you are doing a great job. Let me say that. You're actually one, a few amongst us that are actually doing the work. Now, want to give a shout out also to Howard. We see you got the gear on. So Howard Bison's HBCUs representing.
Yes.
So Cameron, tell us you are here to talk to us today about these elections. The election outcome was not what we wanted it to be. There's a lot of finger pointing, a lot of despair, hurt, questions after this election. So what is let's start with your response to the community and the culture. How should we feel? What should we do?
Easier said than done, but we definitely have to maintain hope. We have to maintain hope. We had Kamala Harris and Tim Walz won, and whether you consider yourself Democrat, Republican, Independent, wherever your candidates beyond the presidential, up and down the ticket, whether they won or lost, that actually doesn't matter. You still, as citizens and as a community, we were always going to have to keep fighting and challenging. Had Kamala Harris been in there, we would have to hold her accountable to her promises. And now that Trump and JD Vance, which feels so weird to say, but as Trump and JD Vance are going to take office, we have to fight and hold them accountable. And you continue to, one thing I would say over all of these years working in the political system at the federal, state, and local level, and also in the private sector, you realize that you have to consistently push your issues. But I would say we have to maintain that hope. This is I think the Democratic Party from federal all the way to the local level has to really look at itself, look at its tactics, look at more so its message. I would say I'm an independent Democrat, even though I've mostly worked for Democrats, but I am an independent thinker, and I don't just blindly go with like the party rules or party vision. But the reason why I've mostly worked for Democrats or independents that lean Democratic is that when you look at their morals and you look at their programs, it's still rooted in wanting to help the working person, still rooted in wanting to lift people out of poverty, still rooted in wanting as fair and equitable system, still rooting in wanting to have a safe environment and being really clear-eyed out about the world. I look at corporations are bad, capitalism's not bad, making money, I'm all for it. But money and corporate interests can't can't be more important than the human interest and the human story. So I know it's natural to feel down. Thank you, Black women. I want to say that because it was so inspiring to see just a woman of color, a Black woman, a woman who I've got to work with directly and got to know a little bit. My fellow Howard Bison to be even in that position and who she is still so historic. Let's not forget she's still the sitting vice president, first ever
Yes.
Black woman to be vice president of the United States of America, which is huge, first ever to run a ticket. So I think there's a lot of strong accomplishments there, but it's time to do one of these, roll up our sleeves and we're gonna have to get to work.
I love it. Thank you for the visual. That's exactly what it is. It's a sleeve rolling up situation. Now, speaking to the answer, you are partnering with the NAACP Atlanta chapter with the well-known attorney Gerald Griggs to have a conversation on the grassroots levels. Also, there's some other major leaders in Atlanta, and you all are doing a family meeting conversation. What's next, community? So tell us about this conversation, why it's important.
One thing that we learned and you consistently learn being in community organizing, political organizing campaign, this still is a service-based business. We are serving voters, we are serving community, we're serving individual people. Everybody But I'm one of those beliefs that everybody has the right. If you are a U.S. citizen, no matter what you've done or done wrong, you should have at the very least the right to vote. That is represent. We have a representative democratic government, and therefore that means even at an individual level, whether you are super into MSNBC, Fox News, all reading all the political boards. You hear everyone a podcast I do had in politics or any other place, or you just check in one every 2 years or 4 years to vote and pay attention a little bit. Your vote still counts and it still matters. And I think moving forward to understand how people are feeling, we have to acknowledge that, to but not to lose sight of what the communities, and I would say Black communities specifically, need. We know if we always say if America catches a cold, Black folks catch pneumonia. So
Mhm.
we know we're at the front line and catch the brunt of any of these policies when things go wrong, and often are one of the last communities to feel the full effects of when things are going right. So now is a time to listen to our community. It's a time to give real insight. There's so much misinformation going on. One thing I want to dispel right now, and will continue to dispel, you're starting to see, what did Kamala spend her money on? She spent 10 million to do this and paid Oprah $1 million. These are, as a person who's has great knowledge on this, it does cost money to build productions and actually set up a rally and things of that nature. If you remember, she did a huge production with Oprah. She did not pay Oprah. Here, Oprah's $1 million, just say you're with me, but it she did the campaign does have to pay for production fees and showing and things of that nature. So, but you hear stuff like that, and I think that the reason why I bring those kind of narratives up are they're meant to try to split and fracture the community, to almost to suppress the interests of communities, especially Black communities, women, young folks, old folks, anybody. And so I think these family meetings where we're going to be presenting factual information, factual updates on what where how actually close this election was. And you may look at the electoral college or look at Democrats lost the Senate and the House and think it was a landslide. In some sense, it was a large victory, but we're talking about less than a 250,000 votes spread out over 7, 8 states could have swung this whole election. 250,000 votes spread out over between Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, a few other places could have swung this election one way or the other in the electoral college. So it was actually very close. And there's a lot of things that we need to talk. We need to talk to people that may not have saw themselves in either candidate and decided to stay home at the couch, or may have been disaffected and not been able to get their votes in on time, or not been given misinformation and disinformation about where to vote. We need to understand and show up first in community, and especially in these months while the feelings are raw, to be able to give people a place to not only speak and tell their mind and their POV, but to actually give them a platform and opportunity to engage there. And then we got to start shifting. It's about the pivot. It's about what we're going to do in the future. It's about what we're going to do in the immediate future, because as we've seen already through messaging around Donald Trump, he plans to mass deportations. That has real impact on communities, especially Black communities, because it's not
Mhm.
just our Hispanic brothers and sisters. We got Africans, we got people coming from the Caribbean, people coming from other parts that are Black people that may not be here in a month or 2 months if Trump gets his way. We've got a lot of different things that we're going to have to prepare to fight for our communities and try to fight for democracy, and not let them kind of trample all over that, because so we have to start to prepare people and prepare our community for, unfortunately, I know it feels like we've always been fighting, and but the fight has to continue if we want to make sure we don't lose all the gains that we have had. But we know there's so much more that our community needs. So we want to start having those conversations. And I'm appreciative of Attorney Griggs, all the panelists in the Atlanta chapter of NAACP, who's been on the ground, one of the most active chapters in the country for so many years, to be able to bring what we do over at Hip Politics and hopefully be additive in support of these kind of this family conversation.
Well said. Now, Cameron, you said that you were an independent Democrat. Is there a space for diplomacy in these conversations? Is there space for bridge building? Once we kind of figure out what we're going to do as a community, are we looking to talk to all parties involved to see how we move forward the Black agenda? Or is this like a silo kind of revolutionary movement?
I'm one of these people that believes like, how do I say it, that I'm not interested in wasting too much time on people who just want to get a rise or are complete opposite and antithetical to what we're trying to do. Like but if we can align on certain issues, if we can align on one thing that we are both in it to make sure people win first, not companies, not corporations, not other governments, not other places, that people win, and then especially continue to acknowledge that our people is as many things that have happened on paper, we still go outside every day in all these communities around America and see that Black people are messed up. It's a lot of our communities that are still recovering or never actually recovered. A lot of our schools and public schools are under resourced. We feel over policed in a lot of different places, but we want to still be able to say be safe and call the law enforcement if we need protection. We want to make sure we can put. I mean, I need eggs, I need bacon, I need water, I need milk, I need the basic necessities, and we've all seen prices rising so high, gas prices fluctuating, all the different things that hit our pocketbook. Make sure our kids and our families have a place, like have a better future to look forward to. I mean, the the American dream we're all working for and that we want as well is to know that we're the country and the place that we're leaving our next generation is going to be better than it was for us. And then while we're still here, because our community is not just about the future, it's still about the now. We want to make sure that we're receiving those same equal rights and those same equal opportunities and those same equal resources. And so I think there's some level of diplomacy, but also when you're in power, I would say power concedes nothing that isn't taken by force. So there's things we're going to have to stand up and fight for and have to make sure at the very least are protected, if not advanced.
Thank you, Cameron. And tell the audience, why should they attend the family meeting, which is taking place Tuesday, November the 19th, 8 p.m. at the Revolt Studios in Atlanta? Why should they show up?
If you're in town, if you're in Atlanta, can get there. I think it's a collaborative space. It's a supportive space first and foremost. So many different people were let down, and I think that the internet machine is kind of almost, and how social media is already kind of making us feel even more down sometimes seeing what happened. But it's a place to find, to be able to have real open and honest and non-judgmental conversation. I think there are going to be a lot of great leaders, great thinkers, great doers who can kind of continue to educate folks who want to know, what do I do next? What's being talked about? What's actually going to be done? What does this actually what does this next few months to a year and 4 years look like for me? What are some things and opportunities that we can take advantage of now? How do I just learn and be involved? How do I just learn so I don't know where all this, you mean, like I said, our community is overly targeted with the misinformation and disinformation. So this is an opportunity to get some real information, facts, facts, not fiction. But I think it is just like a big community space, and then it's Atlanta. It's one of our it's the Mecca, it's the Southern Mecca of America. It's a great time, good opportunity just to be also, I would say, good people, because sometimes it's as simple as I just want to be around other good folks. I want to be in community and in fellowship and in conversation with folks, especially in hard times like this when it feels like a lot of hope may be lost, but it isn't. We got to be encouraged.
The NAACP and Hip Politics present a family meeting Tuesday, November 19th. Conversation is What's Next Community. It's at 8 p.m. at Revolt Studios in Atlanta. We'll put the link so that you can register. Cameron, Calvin, Trimble, thank
Thank,
you for your work and all that you do.
thank you. I appreciate you. Appreciate the Rolling Out family. Make sure you can follow us. We're just wrapping up. You mentioned I host a podcast, Hip Politics Podcast, where we talk and have in-depth and unfiltered conversations with elected officials, candidates, hip hop artists, entertainers, and then movers and shakers in the political and social activism space. Just some of those unfiltered conversations. We're wrapping up season 3 now. I've got a few more episodes coming out, so you can find that wherever you get your podcast, Spotify, Apple, Google, YouTube, SoundCloud, all those places. We also heavily on YouTube, heavily on social media under Hip Politics Podcast. You'll see me and our team, and I think actually, I'll leave you with this: is sometimes in these opposition times, I wouldn't say whether you voted for or didn't vote for it. You may have voted for Trump, you may not have voted for Trump, you may not have voted at all, you may have voted but not at the top of the ticket. But policy and elections do have consequences. Some felt immediately, some felt over years and generations. That's one thing I have learned with my decade plus of being in government, both on the government and campaigning side. But I do think that what we plan to do over in the growing hip politics family, from a media engagement education standpoint, working with our sister nonprofit Hip Nation, who is focused on really educating the next generation in this new hip society. I think we actually have a lot more work to do, and I'm encouraged. I wish it wasn't. I wish it had gone a different way. You know, like fighting from behind, but I'm encouraged because I think this is one of those times where it's going to wake a lot of people up, and they're going to see that we're going to see the consequences of the choice that America as a whole made, and hopefully understand that all of us, have to be more active citizens. Like we don't get to just sit this one out, because we got to make sure it's better, not just for our kids, but even for us.
Awesome. Listen, you are all the things great. Thank you for the inspiration and the education. Again, that is Hip Politics Podcast. Follow my guy. Great conversation and knowledgeable. Thank you again. We appreciate you.
Thank you.